Moving on, we now have the green cards, and starting off with this giant mythic lizard that loves energy. I don't blame it, I love energy too, so yeah, if you love energy, you're going to love this lizard. It's kind of too bad energy is such a new mechanic, because I feel like if it was a bit more established of a mechanic, I really feel like this could have been a bit better of a card. I also think this would have been a lot better if it had haste. It's just too bad because I don't think this is too playable for standard, but it likely will have some home in someone's big-time fun EDH deck that revolves around energy. That's another problem, is that there are a lot of generals that don't revolve around energy too much. Green's legendary creature in this set is Rishkar Pima Renegade, and frankly, this thing is basically a lot like a supporter from the, if you don't remember the support mechanic from Oath of the Gatewatch, it gives counters to some creatures, although it can give a counter to itself. Another thing neat about this guy is that he can give you a lot of mana ramp if you played some creatures before him. So, although his abilities seem kind of niche and uncanny, I really feel like you could get a lot of mana out of this guy if you know what you're doing, and if you have a lot of creatures that have, or have the ability to get 1/1 counters on them really quickly. So like I say, don't count this guy out. I'm sure he'll have a home in someone's EDH elf deck, or maybe even constructed elf deck as well. So, like I say, do not count him out. He can probably be a lot more powerful than it does look. His expertise spell is actually one of my favorites of this set, and my goodness, this could arguably be the most powerful one, considering that it has the highest mana cost of all the expertise spells. The reason is just because you actually draw into the spell that you want to cast and then cast it. At least I feel like that's how that works. It seems fair, considering that, like, the spell costs a lot more than the others. And in short, this will likely be the spell to cast in, to get one of those spells like, I guess you say, Living End, or one of those, that crew out. I mean, good grief, imagine, like, drawing, like, 4 cards from this thing, then drawing another 3 from your Ancestral Vision. Aid from the Cowl is actually a really interesting card. I actually like it quite a bit, considering it has the potential to get in your really large Eldrazi Titan without paying any mana. Frankly, if you have a way to, like, use a fetch land, you could easily play this, and then at the end of your turn, get a nice Eldrazi Titan. Although fetch lands, I don't think are too popular in Standard at the moment. I know the good ones that we use in Modern are no longer legal. But I feel like this could easily be broken and worked into a nice archetype, not for Standard, for something else. It does seem very powerful, and it does seem very, very good. But do keep in mind, there is a bit of luck factor when it comes to this. Just hope you run something that fixes the top cards of your library so you can get the most value out of it. While I was quite impressed with Blossoming Defense, I feel like this next card, Heroic Intervention, is not necessarily better than the card, but it definitely does seem pushed. Basically, preventing your creatures from getting harmed in any way, shape, or form, and also countering a board wipe. Although this may be a little bit different with the Black Expertise spell running around this format, I'm really sick and tired of all these 2 and 3 mana board wipe counters. There are just way too many of them, and I really think they need to stop. I know a lot of people are salty about playing against control, but it's part of the game, and honestly, creatures are just so flipping good now. You shouldn't have to be salty about this, considering you have this spell and Selfless Spirit around to stop effects like this, and it's just bothersome. Come on, you have your good cards. Wizards, you need to give us some good cards, and this is not helping whatsoever. Just stop. It's not funny. You made your point. Now it's your turn to point the other direction. No more cards like these. I'm sick and tired of it. This will likely see play in some format. If you hate board wipes, get it. Next up we have I guess you could say a rogue elephant for this version of the set. This elephant here really wants you to pay energy early on, but likely early on in the state of the game, you're likely not going to have enough energy to keep it around. More than likely you'll probably have enough energy around turn 3 or 4 to help satisfy its hunger. So by then you'll get a fairly strong creature around turn 3 or 4, but to be honest, for that reason alone, I don't really feel like it's really worth playing. I feel like there's more explosive things you could be doing at this time in the game, but I guess you could have other mana for other things. Maybe a counterspell. The same thing is kind of true with the Green Will Liberator. I feel like its maximum potential is much later in the game than the turn you played on. Although it does give you the versatility to do that and get you a Goblin Piker for a green Goblin Piker for 2 mana. A 4/3 for later down the road does seem a lot better, especially if you can get a Revolt trigger off of it. And yes, I feel like there could be also much things that are much more explosive than a 4/3 for 2. I mean, on turn 4 or around turn 3 or 4, but still, it's not really something I'm too crazy about either. Monstrous Onslaught is also kind of a new card or a new idea to green, as it actually deals divided damage to creatures equal to the greatest power among creatures you control when you cast it. You also have to keep in mind it's when you cast it, so if your opponent responds to it and removes your strongest creature, it will actually still keep that creature accounted for and do damage equal to its power to a bunch of creatures your opponents control. Although it does cost 5 mana, I kinda am doubtful that this card will see constructed play, but still, it's a very neat idea, and it's a new idea to green, which is something to keep in mind. Another card I really like is the Malphist Revolutionary. This also helps with your energy and 1/1 counters. It's sort of like that pirate in blue that we talked about earlier, except this is also neat as it actually triggers upon entering or leaving the battlefield. Its ability will trigger quite a few times, especially if you have ways to recycle it. Hot Dog, it's just pretty darn sweet, because it's going to give you a lot of value in that regard, so I hope you have lots of energy counters and lots of creatures that use 1/1 counters when you play this card. Hot Dog. The next card I'm kind of interested in is the Hidden Herbalists, which sort of reminded me of a card like Burning Tree Emissary, although it's likely not going to be as explosive. You have to bounce a permanent or get rid of a permanent, or a permanent has to die before it really takes and accounted for. But I guess if you attack into your unsuspecting opponent and they trade or kill one of your attacking creatures, you can get a lot of creatures out of this card's ability. Frankly, I feel like it will see a bit of play for something, although I feel like it's more for all-out aggressive decks, just like kind of Burning Tree Emissary is. And frankly, I don't know if green has enough, I guess you could say, early game power to really get all that stability off and really get all that aggressive force out like you could potentially do with Burning Tree Emissary, because the thing about Burning Tree Emissary is you can play either red or green, and this card you can just play green. Nonetheless, I'm sure it will have a use for something because it is a Revolt creature. Moving on to commons, we have another reprint of Prey Upon. In Innistrad, we had Human fighting Werewolf. In Eldritch Moon, we had Werewolf fighting Eldrazi, and this we have... what the hell's going on here? Someone's getting fed, so I guess that's the flavor behind it. Good for him. Hope he lives a long and fruitful life. Natural Obsolescence sort of acts as if a much lesser Naturalize. However, one thing to keep out is it puts it on the bottom of the library. And since there are a lot of cards that do get value upon sacrificing or being destroyed, it may very well counteract those abilities. However, like I say, it does only hurt artifacts and not enchantments, so just keep that in mind. Still, this will likely see some play, so don't count it out just because it's limited target selection. Closing down the commons, we have Druid of the Cowl. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised this card was printed because I think Wizards made a big stink about mana batteries with over 3 toughness. But nonetheless, I think this is pretty sweet. I'm sure this is a card a lot of people in Standard wanted, as it is a 2-mana creature that produces some mana. We had cards like, Sylvan Caryatid from Theros, which was an absolute monster, partially because it had hexproof, but also partially because it had 3 toughness. I knew a lot of people were complaining because it had 3 toughness, and it was actually really hard for aggressive decks to take down unless they put a lot of pump spells on their dudes. This may be the same case, although it would die to Lightning Bolt if Lightning Bolt wasn't standard, but I feel like this will see a lot of play, especially to get those big, rampy, mid-range creatures like Bristling Hydra. There are several others that could potentially be played, but this is really good. I'm sure it will see some play in some sort of deck in Standard, at least. Okay, so for the 50th time, here's a Revolt creature. It's really good with bouncing and returning things to your hand and sacrificing stuff. So if you do run a deck that does that stuff, this will likely be something to play. I know I'm a broken record, but yes, this is what you should play if you run those things.